and here we go. So first thing first, why do you need to learn this? I mean, you want to use Linux just as a hobby, that's enough. You really don't need to learn this. But if you want to explore further what happened, how we control the system, how security actually works, so it is not everything about the security, but it is one of the important topics about the Linux security, where you manage about the users, what they can do, or what are the permissions we should provide them. If something is shareable, how you could share. Like before we learn how we can create user, how we can create group, how we can add user into a group, how we can remove. But that was not enough. Okay, this session is very generalized. Regardless any field you are coming from, this concept is applied to all this. So if you are working on container, then still you have to know about the permissions. If you are working in Kubernetes, so ultimately you run a container where you want to control the access. So let's start and switch to our terminal. So first what we will do, okay, I have this many files over here. Let's just start with this one. So if we know this command, right? We learn in day one, ls-l, and we know ls-l, what it does, it gives us output in a long listing format. It gives us a more information. And what more information? So today we are interested in this part, okay, and this part. Here we have all these files, okay. And if we see, like I mentioned also, how we can identify files, here we go. If we see very first thing in this column as a dash, it means it is a file, okay. And after that we see some letters over here, R, W, then again dash over here. Or maybe let me make a little bit zoom over here so we can focus. What, maybe it's too blurry, but anyways, so this field has a dash, and again it has a R over here, right? Then we have a W over here, similarly dash, then R, and then dash dash. So all these are collectively called as a permission. What permission? So of course we are very smart enough. We know R it means read, right? W it means write permission. All right. So we have seen two permissions over here. First one is R represents read, W represents write. There is nothing special. You know already this. Okay. Then here this column represents the owner. Who is the owner? An owner of the files which is over here. So whatever files or whatever contents we can see over here, so this column represents the owner of this property or this asset or this file. Okay, in Linux everything is file, or in general you could also say the object, or however you want to say. Third column, which represents the group. I mean, which group it belongs to. Currently, who has logged in on the system? This user. And we are seeing, or we have listed this user's directory, and inside that we find this many contents or this many files. So by default this is the owner, because this user has created this file. That's why owner is also dsop cube and group owner. Okay, this is called group owner. I won't say only a group, but I would say group owner is also a dsop cube. But we don't have any directory yet, so let's create one directory first, and mkdir, and let's create it over here. All right, so I have created a directory. Let me clear the screen. And next, what we could do, when we say this temp and -6, so of course it won't give us a permission details. So what I could do, I could L and D, okay. And this time we have something different than before. Okay, and what is different? Let's do one more thing. We create one file, and vim/tmp day6, and let's say param.txt or permissions.txt. I just give it a short name, and let's say the sockq text. All right, let me save it. I have saved it. Now if I execute this command again, so here we go. Okay, here we have file, and here we have directory. And if we see over here, and here what do we have? Instead of dash we have D. So D represents directory, but here the permissions are different. Here we have read, write, execute, RWX. This also has RWX, and this also has RWX. When we talk about the file, okay, so file has something different thing. Okay, and you might be wondering why I'm telling this pair of three. Okay, so I always refer this three I always refer this three, I always referring like this three. Okay, so here the thing is, first one represent your either it's a directory or file, just for us, for human being, but in Linux everything is file. So here we know, okay, this is a directory, this is a file, but in case of file we have rw, but in case of directory we have rwx. Okay, so x represent execute permission. Here it also represents rwx, read, write, execute. So first three things, okay, or I would say first cluster or first set belongs to this one. Okay, who is the owner of the file or directory. Second one, it represent the permissions for group. So in this case, of course, DSOCube is a group, so it is allowed to read, write, and execute in this directory. And similarly, this last three bits or last three bits or symbols, okay, of permission in specifically, it represents for others other than owner and group. Any user on the system which is not like this, okay, even not a part of this group, how we can check the whether user is a part of a group or not. So we already saw that before in group management. So others have read as well as execute permission. Okay, but in case of file, it has only read permission, others. Okay, similarly here nobody has execute permission. So we will talk execute permission later, but just understand X means execute. This is the only thing to understand in permission and ownership. I mean, there are so many things, but this is where many people get confused. I was also confused. So I will show you what is the purpose of execute permission in directory and in file. Okay, so we will come on that later. But for time being, this three represents honor these three permissions for group and this three for others. Okay. Similarly, in case of file, we have like this read, write, and read. So always remember, in case of directory, only others does not have permission to write. Write, it means you can create, you can modify file, you can put some text. Nobody has execute permission, and which is also very nice. That's why any executable things cannot directly execute on the system. You have to specifically provide execute. So I have said several times execute. It's very important. That's why. So here we go. Now we understand, in case of directory, the permissions are like this. Only others do not have write permission. In case of file, nobody has execute permission and others do not have write as well as execute permission. So this is about the permissions in short. So now we have created and we understand how what is the permission for file, what is the permission for directory, and now we are going to see how we can change this ownership. Okay, so these are first column, this is user ownership, second column group ownership, and that's our topic for today. The very first thing, let me show you -5/etc passwd. In previous session we already created this user and I told you we will use in our upcoming session. Now let's use this user. We already have this users, and also see what do we have in groups. So we already have these groups. We do not have any custom group. Okay, for time being, we deleted last time. So we have user QA1, dev1, ops1, and data science or DS1. Do this tmp and day6, and we have this file over here. All right. Now I'm gonna switch user, and this time I would use QA1 user like this. Okay, so now who am I? I'm a QA user. And if we see this directory ld, okay, so this user, we already created one file in this directory. We have one file, and yes, this command can work. So now it says others can read the file. Okay, we are talking about QA1 user, so which is at the moment other, because it is not in a group of the sock. Okay, we already checked that before. So this is other. So according to it, it can read the content of this file. Okay, so let's read this cat/tmp day6 form.txt. Okay, so id. Okay, anyways, so id subcube text. So we have this. So according to this permission, okay, permission of this file, others can read. So this is about others. So this QA1 user is not part of this cube group, and ownership still holds with this occupe. But it says, okay, I'm very generous and I'm allowed to others, they can read the file. Okay, all right. We read and found, okay, this occupe made a mistake. Okay, it forgot to delete I. Okay, we'll delete this letter. So let's correct and help. Okay, and how we can help? Let's open this file instead of cat. What we could do, let's open this file and make it correct. Remove this. Okay, I remove do letter. We don't want to make a mistake like this of cube. So we know this command, right? Here, colon wq save and exit, and it says can't open file for writing. Press enter or type command to continue. Apparently, we are not allowed to make any changes. Why? Because here we do not have any write permission. We only have read permission. It means QA1 user. So we are pretending now we are QA1 user. All right, QA1 user, you are not allowed. So what can be done? Okay, you are not allowed, but you are allowed to read. So let's do one thing. Let's create one file, qa1 dot, let's say txt, though extension doesn't matter in Linux, but still tmp day6 and wow, permission denied. So again, the same thing, others only can read, cannot write in this. And why? So here we already saw others read and execute. Please hold your thought on execute permission. Okay, I will explain you on in very detail. But for time being, we do not have, or others do not have any write permission. So that's why here we got permission denied while creating a file, even though while editing a file. Okay, so write, it means when you want to modify a file inside the directory, if you want to create anything inside the directory, you are not allowed to. Okay, because others do not have permissions over here. So to fix this, the write permission in the file, we can change user ownership. Same thing, we are talking about others. Okay, we are not worried about at the moment for this part. Okay, let's leave it as is. So we are talking about read and execute for others, those who are not part of this group. Okay, and we saw here write permissions missing in the directory. Okay, and so we cannot create any file over here in temp day6. And additionally, we do not have write permissions, okay, to modify a file. Okay, how we can inform this occupe user, right? It has made a mistake. It's a blender, should not type I. And now we are going to fix this. So QA1 user can write something in file and make a correction. So what I need to do, so QA1 user is not, it's not privileged user, so it cannot perform such kind of operations, changing or doing anything on the system. And this ocube is a part of sudo. So it can perform something like this, sudo chown, and we want to user QA1, okay, as well as QA1 as a group. And group we are changing for temp day6 and param.txt. All right, so we have made changes in the permissions. Now let's go back and switch to the user QA1. Okay, and now let's see whether QA1 user is allowed to make the changes. Okay, so first thing we will fix. Okay, but before that, let's use this command echo. We also learn qa1 text, and we know we want to override the content. Not override, we want to append the content, not the override. That's why we are using this two greater than sign. And which file? This file. Okay, this time no error. And we know when there is no error in the Linux, it means it is, or the operation has executed successfully. So let's, this time what happened, let's check as well as edit the content as well. All right, so our, it means QA1 users text are over here. Let's fix this as well. We are modifying it. We have written the content in the file, and we also modified it. How this happened? So let's go ahead and do something like this: tmp day6 and permission. So what I have done over here, I have changed the ownership to QA1 user as well as QA1 group. So those who are part of QA1 group, everybody can perform this operation. So now we have changed this. That's why it is able to perform this thing. All right, so that's okay. We are able to modify a file. That's what we can say, okay, you made this mistake, this okay, we have changed this, and not change, we have fixed this actually. That's okay. Now we are honor of this, right? So what we can do, we want to create some files over here. Why not? We got very good space, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Is 6 and it says permission denied. Let me see if I'm allowed to make any directory inside this. Not here. Stamp dash 6 and let's say QADIR. And I'm also not allowed as a QA user to create any directory as well. Reason very simple. I'm not going to clear the screen. So please focus on this part. So here again, we will check the permissions of day 6. Okay, because we are creating directory inside it. And here, if we see again, we do not have permission on this directory because it is, or this directory is still has ownership of the subcube user and group ownership also the same. That's why we are not able to perform such kind of operation. So what could be done over here? So here the simple thing is we can change the ownership for everything. For example, in this day 6, if I have a multiple directory, so what I would do, will I go and execute command for each and every directory to change the ownership? No, of course not, right? So those who built this command, they know this could be definitely a use case. So that's why we have something over here and which is changing ownership recursively. So how we could do that? Let me clear the screen and come back to the subcube user. Here I'm gonna create one directory, mkdir, stamp day 6 and qadir. Okay, so we created this directory, okay, inside day 6. Now we know it is created by the cube user, so definitely it has the same ownership for day 6, right? If we check something like this, and if I remove the D, so I could see the subcube has still the honor when holding the user ownership as well as group ownership by the subcube user, and that's what we don't want. We want to give freedom to QA users. They can perform whatever they want to. So for that, very simple, what we will do, we will change the ownership recursively. So how we could do sudo ch on, only one command we have to remember. Okay, ch for change, o w, and it means on ownership. And this time we have to use dash r option. So dash r option, it's a recursive. So we want to give recursive. So first this side represents user, this side represents group, and where we want to do jump day 6. All right, it's done. And now the user qa1, 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 and again qa directories also. Okay, everything has been changed. And if I use this option, so here also change. So I could simply say the ownership has been changed, not only this directory, even whatever content. So if you have multiple files, okay, multiple directories, or whatever content you have, when you say something like this dash r option, when you use it, means you are changing user ownership as well as group ownership, whatever you are mentioning over here for this directory. So this is what happened over here. Now let's do one more thing. Let's create one file for dsocube. Okay, everybody is creating our file dsocube.txt, but I don't want to create it over here. I want to create it over here. And day, sorry, day 6, and it says permission denied, right? It says permission denied because the subcube your owner is no more a part of QA. I mean, it doesn't hold the ownership, user ownership as well as QA ownership, but it has a sudo privilege. When it performs something like this, then it is allowed. So that's why root user, I mean, not say root user has unlimited power, but sudo user could perform something like this. Okay, and when I check the things inside this, so you could see it has user ownership and the group ownership as a root and root. Okay, not as a DSOC queue. Okay, remember always. So that's why sudo, it means it says, or it seems like, okay, I'm creating with this user, but no, even though you are creating, but you are using the privilege of root user. That's why here the ownership, I mean user ownership as well as group ownership belong to root user. Okay, This is about recursive change when you change the ownership. Next thing, there are some scenario where you don't want to change ownership for entire group. As I said, we are going to use only one command, chown, nothing else. Okay. I mean, of course, there is one more command, but we will come on that later. So let me clear the screen. And this time, as I said, what if we want to change the ownership of the directory? Okay, so for that, let me show you one thing, mkdir. Let's create one directory, ops directory, okay, and lsld, ops dir, okay. So here, DSOC cube holding the ownership of this directory and group ownership also it has. So let's change this. So in order to change, what you can perform sudo chown, okay, and give the username ops1 and ops directory, okay, because we wanted to change the user ownership to this user. Remember, we are aiming to change the user ownership. Okay, let me make a little bit zoom. Okay, so we are aiming to change user ownership to this user. So currently the user ownership who has DSOC cube user, okay, and we want to change this to ops1. But for what? For this directory. All right. So we know the command and we have written the command or we type the command. Let's hit enter. And now we know this command by which we can verify the permissions. And if you see ops1 user, now it is a owner, okay, and now it is a owner, then this set of permissions are applied to this user, ops1, okay. And what it says, read, write, execute. So it means ops can perform all these things. So let's validate, does it really happen or not? Okay, sudo. Okay, guys. So there is one more command. I think I did not explain. I did not tell you. So sudo uh, passwd. Okay. Why I'm using sudo switch? Okay, let me show you the first command. Sudo switch dash, and what was the username? Ops1. Okay. So I mean, of course, when we perform sudo, so root user can, when you do not set a password. So, for example, you are doing a user administration, okay, or creating a user, and you really don't want to create any password, but still you want to check what is whether user can perform things or not. Okay, so in that case, you can use this, but we want to change the password and we want to use a password. So sudo passwd is the command to set a password for this user. Okay, and if you're following along, so before executing this command, just check the shadow file for this user. Okay. And once you perform or set the password, then go back and again check the what happened in the password file. So I execute this command. It asks me to provide a password. I have provided the password updated successfully. So now clear the screen and let's go back, switch user, and this time ops1 user. So now it asks me for the password, of course. And now we know ls-ld, okay, and where is the directory? So directory was created at dsoc, no, not dsoc, home, dsoc cube user, and ops-dir, ls-ld, ops-dir. Okay, so now let's switch the user again. All right, that permission was acceptable, and yes, that is expected as well. And I will come on that later why. But let's first see, we have made or changed the user ownership to ops1 user. These three things, they say, okay, the user owner, whomsoever it may concern, okay, can perform read, write, X permission or read, write, execute. So let's see if we can perform or create any file. Okay, ops1 text, and where we want to create /home dsoc ops dir, and again it says permission denied. Okay, though it has a ownership permission, but still it is not allowed to. So again, this is also acceptable, or this is expected, I would say, not of course acceptable, but also expected. So let me switch the user again to dsoc, and this time what I'm going to do, let's create a file. Okay, and where we want to create, we want to put this inside this. Okay, and I have to give a name of the file, dsoc txt. If I want to read this, ops and this occup. Okay, so the content of the file is like this. And when we check the permissions, okay, let me clear the screen first so we can focus. So though the ops directory has a ownership with the ops one user, okay, but still this occup holds the group ownership, and this DSOCube user is a part of this DSOCube group. That's why it is able to create. Okay, shortly I'm coming on the permission denied thing, but let me show you more thing over here. Okay, in this what we have done, we have changed the user ownership, but what only if we want to change the ownership of the group. Okay, we don't want to change user ownership, but we want to change the group ownership. So for that, let me create one directory. Let's say dev dir. Okay, dev directory. All right, and let's d dev dir. This time we want to change the group ownership, and for that we use the same command but in different way. What is different? Let me show you. So dev1, this time we want to change only group ownership, not user ownership. That's why before column we did not mention anything. Okay, and now the dev dir and next. And if you see over here, the group ownership has been updated already, and we already saw that scenario for ops dir and for dev dir. Okay, when we change the ownership, then still it is not able to perform anything. Similarly, if we switch the dev user and create one file inside this home and the sock cube, and here I have a directory dev.dir dev1.txt, permission denied. And similarly, if you create any directory, if you create any file, here always permissions gonna deny. Okay, what is the reason? I will come back on this again when we learn about user management. So we learn two commands, user mode, and where I told you A and G together if you want to modify a user's group. But I also told you another command, group mod. It also has something you have to perform like this. So nobody is going to restrict you. It's up to you, whichever command you like. This is my preference because I am used to it. Okay, but I explain you how you could use it. Okay, group mode and user mode. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna add a user sudo user mode A and G. QA1 group, let's add them. Which user? That one. All right. And we know when we check the ownership, okay, so groups tab one. So we can see dev1 is a part of QA1. We can also use the same command for updating ops user. Okay, ops1. All right. So now groups ops1, and it's been updated. Now you can also check in /etc group file. Okay, these users are already added. Okay, let me show you quickly. etc group. So these users are already added in QA1 group, and now this user should be able to write inside the day6 directory. Okay, so let's check first with sudo switch user ops1. Let's first list what do we have in tmp day6. Okay, we do not have anything, so let's create one file. Touch which user, ops1 user, ops1.txt, and inside tmp day6. My bad, sometimes happen. So now it's correct. Clear the screen and come back over here. So what just happened over here? So let me show you. So group has every permissions over here: read, write, and execute. Or let me go over here and explain you this again. ls-ld tmp day6. Okay, so group has permission. Okay, QA1 group, we already added ops and dev both in this, and that's why they are able to do this over here. But what went wrong for this one? ld ops dir ls-ld dev dir. Okay, here we have already added, but dev user was not able to do anything in this. Similarly, ops user holding the ownership of this directory, still it's not able to do. Okay, so the thing over here is very simple, and very simple is this: whenever you are performing the task, Okay, whenever you are changing things, it also depends on the parent directory. Okay, so here we are doing in temp. Okay, and in temp directory, okay, the permissions are different. Okay, and there where we are doing slash home directory. Okay, and if you see here, the permissions are different. Okay, home directories has permissions like this: read, write, execute, but for group, read and execute only. Okay? And that's why, and when I see this of cube home, and here is the same, read and execute only, do not have any write. Def, yeah. So you can perform something like this. You can list. Okay, but when I change, let me show you. For example, this of cube is a sudo user. Let's go to dev1. It does not have permission. qa1, it does not have permission, right? ops1 does not have permission. That is because of this permissions, okay, which has a home. Okay, it says only execute and read. You cannot do any right thing. Okay, how we can fix this? So yes, we can change the permissions, and that is our actually next topic. But today's topic was completely focused on ownership. Now you realize changing ownerships are not enough. Okay, and if I do something like this, tmp, so here you could see it has, everybody has all the permissions. Okay, read, write, execute for the user, read, write, execute for the group owner, read, write, and here we do not have x. Okay, we will talk about this later. Consider this as a read, write, execute. Okay, and that's why the color of this one. Okay, when we lt in slash. Okay, so let me remove this one. So if you see all the directories, if permissions are different, and if you see this has something different permissions, it is also something different permission, but here the permissions are completely different, and it shows like this. Okay, so today we have talked about the ownership, but I didn't talk about the permissions. In next session, yes, I'm going to explain how we could do this, though it is not secure way, but still I will show you how we can modify a permission for home directory, and which is not recommended, just for learning. It's okay, and but we will do to learn. Okay, so in next session we will learn about the permissions. Okay, and today was completely focused on the ownership. So let me quickly show you chown, change file owner, and the group. Synopsis, it means syntax. So options, we scroll down and we talk about owner and the group. Okay, whenever you have any confusion, refer this document. I have explained you. Now if you read this, I believe you will get understanding about this. Okay, additionally, one more command I was talking about initially. Okay, chgroup, main chgrp, chgroup. So change group ownership. Okay, so if you want to perform, or if you have to perform, like if you are frequently managing groups or modifying or doing some operations on that, then use this one. It performs the same. So here these are the option it has. Where is this? Some examples: ch group staff, and this is the directory name. It says changes the group of this asset or this thing to staff. Okay, similarly, recursively you could also use like this, and it says change the group of this and subdirectories to staff. Okay, and in case of on, you also find some examples over here. So this is about the root, change the owner of this to root. Okay, but this is root user. Okay, similarly here is also, okay, root as well as the staff. So likewise, but also change its group to staff. Okay, and of course recursively. So these two things we have talked about today, and let's go back. So we saw ownership and permissions both. We also change the ownership recursively. We change the ownership of directory. Okay, we also change the only directory on. We also only change only group ownership, right? And we also saw access failure, and of course I told you the next step. I could have been continue. I thought to explain permission and ownership both, and I planned that already, but I realized it will be too much if we go in one. So that's why today I only explain ownership. In next session, I'm gonna explain permissions, and that would be a part 2. Once again, this is a LinkedIn group. These are social media handles. If you have any questions, write them, let me know. This session help you to understand the concept. Please give it a thumbs up, support our channel. Please do practice questions we are posting on our Instagram. Try to solve those, participate. Thank you very much for your attention. I see you in the next one. Until then, bye bye.